Joining us now is Adam Kovacevich, who is the founder and CEO of Chamber of Progress, which is a center-left tech industry policy coalition that promotes the progressive future of technology. You can find him at ADAMKOVAC. Adam, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
So, Mr. Brendan Carr, Commissioner Brendan Carr, is in the hot seat today. This is just a standard oversight hearing, or is this for a particular reason, this hearing today?
Well, I think he might like to think it's a standard oversight hearing, but I think he knows it's not going to be. The Senate can have these hearings whenever they choose to, and I think they sped up having this hearing because of the back and forth that he had over the Kimmel situation. The fact is, Ted Cruz is the chair of this committee that's going to be, having an oversight hearing with Brendan Carr and the other FCC commissioners. And Ted Cruz was one of the rare Republicans who was critical of Brendan Carr's comments and said, look, we got to be consistent as conservatives here. If we don't want the government to be the speech police, then, we criticized it when we saw the Biden administration do stuff that we didn't like. We shouldn't be doing the same thing to help President Trump. That's not consistent as conservatives. And so, a fascinating kind of intra-Republican dynamic with Ted Cruz calling this hearing.
I can only imagine that there's going to be other things that will be discussed in this meeting too, or this hearing today too, including whether Netflix purchase is going to go through.
That may be discussed. The FCC doesn't actually have a role over that acquisition. I think that's one of the things that's kind of interesting about Brendan Carr's situation is that, a lot of media is not happening through broadcast. And the FCC's mandate is really quite limited. They have oversight over things like local broadcast stations and and those kinds of things, broadcast spectrum, but they really have no oversight over streaming. They have no oversight over satellite radio. They have no oversight over most modern apps, Google, Amazon, Apple. They don't really have no role there. And so I think one of the things you see Brendan Carr doing is sort of operating by threat. He also is somebody who's kind of used the bully pulpit, but I think the way in which he's used the bully pulpit to criticize, frankly, speech that President Trump doesn't like goes way beyond the FCC's actual powers. And this is something that the Democratic Commissioner on the FCC, Anna Gomez, has pointed out repeatedly, that the FCC really doesn't have a lot of power here.
I've mentioned this on the air before to many of our listeners are probably tired of it, but having my history in radio, and I've been doing it for 50 years, but working in terrestrial radio for so many years and as a program director and an operations manager and a temporary general manager, one of the things I always learned was protect the license, because the FCC was there to protect the airwaves. They belong to the people. That's the idea. It's sort of like, that's your property, America. And if broadcasters do something that runs afoul of their mission, which is to make it and use it for the public good, then you have the right to come in and take their license away. But in this particular case, Jimmy Kimmel worked for ABC, but there are so many of these other issues, as you just mentioned, the Facebooks of the world and some of the other things. It's any connection to FCC regulation seems a little bit distant.
It is distant. And again, I think that's why it's been interesting to see how Brendan Carr has operated. So when he was in the minority before President Trump was elected, a lot of what he spent time on was kind of lobbing bombs. He was very outspoken against Chinese ownership of TikTok. He was very outspoken about what he saw as the Biden administration leaning on social media platforms to engage in what he viewed as censorship. They would view it differently. This was around things like coronavirus and what the Biden administration viewed as misinformation. So he was really vocal about that. And then I think that got him on President Trump's radar. Trump's a fan of his. He named him FCC chair. And then he goes around and basically starts doing the same thing, which is kind of eagerly stepping into this role of Trump's attack dog against media outlets that are being mean to President Trump. And it's really just a complete flip-flop for where Carr had been as a minority commissioner. And I think, in just really just abandoning kind of principles to embrace this role of Trump's attack dog.
Adam Kovacevich is with us, founder CEO of Chamber of Progress. We're talking about the FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr in front of a Senate committee today. I wonder, is there anything the Senate can do other than short of just being, cajoling and criticizing and so on? He's not going to be going anywhere, is he?
That's right. He's not going to be going anywhere. No, but I think, look, he is someone who has risen through the ranks of Republican politics, and frankly has had good relationships and a good reputation among Republican senators, and even historically some Democrats, a handful of Democrats, but. I think that what I think you'll see happen today is I think you'll see Ted Cruz, maybe one other Republican, really go after Carr on his comments in against ABC, and I think you'll see the Democrats really hammer him on this point. But what I think you'll see the other Republicans on the committee do is sort of focus on other issues. They'll focus on broadcast policy and media ownership caps, and some of that has been on the FCC's plate, but. You're absolutely right. These oversight hearings, they are a little bit of a barometer for sort of how much leash an appointee has from Congress. But ultimately, look, I think Brendan Carr has kind of taken the view that the FCC is not really an independent agency. It's a Trump agency. And that's a departure from where independent agencies like the FCC have historically been. But I think a role and a transition he's been eager to make.
We will listen closely and eagerly today. Adam Kovacevich, thank you for joining us on POTUS.